Hello, it is May 3rd, 2025. I'm Conalisa Mahu with Lighthouse News and Notes. I'm here today with Donna D'Angelo and the Institute of Christ Consciousness. Today we are exploring divine and human connections again, and we're talking about the garden culture of Adam and Eve. Cannot wait for this presentation. Here we go. Also, would just like for you to know Donna's email, Donna at institutechristconsciousness.org. She's very accessible. If you are getting a lot of information from this presentation today, please reach out to her if you have more questions after that, or if you're with us today, please ask your questions while we're in the presentation. So Donna, so happy to have you here again in this space. Very exciting to talk more about Adam and Eve and this garden culture. Do you have a great I know you have a great presentation for us today.
Well, thank you, Kona. We'll get started in just a minute with the presentation, but I just wanted to build upon what we discussed last time for our viewing audience, not just participating today. I just want to encourage you to go back to the last one we did in April, talking about who Adam and Eve were and are, and what they are now doing on the planet to help us with our planetary reclamation. So we can go ahead and begin the presentation on PowerPoint. And so today we're talking about building the garden culture of Adam and Eve. Okay, first slide. So what we are about now is developing a higher social consciousness based upon divine models. A spiritual and moral social culture is based upon the divine plans given to an evolutionary world for the spiritual and human realms to co-create together. Our world, as a rebellion sphere, violated the plans of higher consciousness evolution. Now, there's a lot to this backstory, and I'm not going to go into that today because we are now in the time of building the higher plans for the planet and to discuss more who is involved with we humans to bring that about. Okay, next point. Divine help, long overdue, is now in place to encourage humanity to tap into the divine plans of evolutionary rehabilitation. Adam and Eve, as our biologic and social uplifters, are back in spirit form to teach us their divine models based on the loving, synergistic relationship of our divine mother and father and the culture of the family. Keep in mind that our planet is part of a very vast starry aggregation. And that aggregation is administered by a wide variety of spiritual beings who are here to help us impart the actual, it's not just the changes, but to impart and imprint upon human mind the divine ideals and values to feed our consciousness with what we need to do at the human end to make these real in material form. Adam and Eve, as our biologic uplifters, and those two beautiful material but divine beings are here to teach us the ways of their higher social culture, which is peaceful, harmonious, agrarian, and they love and reverence the earth plane, and they understand all of the elements of the natural world, including the animal, mineral, and vegetable kingdom, and how to communicate with that to teach us their ways. So we can go on to the next bullet point. Adam and Eve collaborate with our planetary seraphim to help humanity construct the divine plans of planetary reform. There are 12 sectors of seraphic involvement in our social institutions and areas of human spiritual cooperation, wherein the higher realms impart the information into human consciousness for us to take action and implement the plans. We do not have all the information within our minds at this time. We have a spirit of the creator that is helping us adjust our thinking. But the actual plans of planetary rehabilitation are coming from our universe mother and father. And that is being translated into human mind by our planetary seraphim. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation and the ways in which Adam and Eve can communicate with us. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So the Adam and Eve model for areas of development. So this is where the the social culture of Adam and Eve start to engage with human mind. So I just mentioned that teaching humanity how to communicate with the natural world to use its resources for natural sustainability. Presently, we are living in a culture where we do not fully understand the laws of what you might call cosmic physics and how to configure material composition so that it doesn't leave any kind of carbon blueprint, if you will, or a footprint in terms of, sorry about that, in terms of how we would be able to configure matter that doesn't leave any, that you don't have, there's no need for like a landfill or, learning how to communicate with the plant kingdom. So we get all of the nutritive and healing value of that. And so one of the other areas of development, and this is very, very important, is to restore the balance of the male-female relationship dynamic. So men and women are more cooperative rather than mistrusting and antagonistic, because there's a synergy between Adam and Eve based on the model of our divine mother and father that they want us to replicate. And we are still in a phase where men and women are not necessarily completely harmonious, but we are moving in that direction for men and women to appreciate what their roles are individually and how we can come together collectively. And so this is one of the areas that Adam and Eve want to teach humanity about their ways, because the next bullet point is very important here, because it's all due to the returning to the culture of the divine pattern of the nuclear family, where each parent is dedicated to and very involved in the spiritual and social development of the child. The home is the environment to train children in the ways of life. And in many of our Western cultures, we have a lot of fragmented families where it's based on a one-parent model because of the ways in which our marriage mores have developed. But in the nuclear family, based on the divine model of our parents and then the Adam and Eve, it is up to both parents to support the development of the child. And this is something that we need to return to develop social models where the nuclear family is, again, the foundational social structure, because this is where the place where, next bullet point, please. The child rearing culture becomes more of a dominant and prevailing way of life, supplanting the value system of the economy as the driving force of evolution, training children to develop their natural abilities and talents that they may be contributing members of society. Now, we have some of that in place here as parents do strive, I think, to do their best to teach children how to become self-responsible and self-sustaining. But we are still living in a very money-driven society where the economy is more of the value system. And we are being encouraged to return to the child rearing aspect of our planetary culture as a more fundamental social structure, because children are the next generation, and they need to build upon what the previous generation has learned so that we can continue to foster higher planetary revelation and build this beautiful social culture based on divine values of peace, love, tolerance, compassion, and all that, what you might call spiritual attitudes. And so we still are a long way away from that, but that is the model and that is the direction that we're moving in. Now, I can go into a lot more detail about this, but this is more of a general presentation to help us understand the ways Adam and Eve are now coming in to feed us with that information to help us learn what these principles are, and then, of course, how to implement them. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, next slide. So here we're going into the areas of the seraphim and how they are involved in our social reform. So there's 12 areas of seraphic involvement that cover all areas of planetary life. And I've referenced the paper in the Urantia book where they have more detail about how planetary government at the spiritual level is configured. So some of the groups are the angels of progress, angels of enlightenment, angels of health, angels of industry, angels of the races. These groups are all designed to, next bullet point, please, to instill the divine values and ideals into the areas of human consciousness for us to perceive the information necessary to foster the higher social reform and evolution. So next bullet point. They observe where human mind is directed so they can inspire individuals with the information needed to foster the corrective changes. So they're working in these very large social areas. For example, to talk about the angels of industry. It's kind of difficult for people to think that there are angels who are involved in how we conduct our business and our trade, but there are divine models of how to conduct these activities in, for example, in this particular social institution. And so they're constantly helping and feeding human mind with these higher values and ideals for us to incorporate them into how we live our lives. And presently, we are in a very concerted phase of understanding the nature of the economy, how we can construct what you might call a spiritual-based economy. They're going to help us with that. There's many, many ways. And again, I'm being very general because it's up to us to take responsibility to communicate with them and receive the information that they want us to know. And so next point. They are especially interested to collaborate with humans who have the higher functions, who are involved in the higher functions to perform on the planet. The humans of the reserve core of destiny who have greater capacity to serve in the divine plans of evolution. So there are a number of people who are gaining their spiritual awareness on the planet. And these people, called the reserve core of destiny, are being prompted with information so that they complete the objectives of their own divine life purpose and contribute to the evolution of the social culture. Again, this is very general. There's a lot more specificity to speak about, and we will be covering that in future podcasts later in this year. But I'm going to pause here now and see if there's any questions or comments. And again, this is very general, very general.
Donna, you've given us a lot of really good information. And as you said, this is the general overview. And this last slide that you gave us, I know that with the Women's Core, we focus on the social reform and we tap into the social reform that's happening on the planet. Maybe you could just say a few words as to how our audience and listeners could tap into what's happening on the planet and make a contribution.
Yes, and that is actually the last slide, so we can go into that and then I'll explain a little bit more.
Certainly, one moment.
So how do we participate in building the higher social culture? So we're the boots on the ground, and we are responsible for making the changes necessary to use the help given to us, uh, who are the helpers who know the divine plans of rehabilitation and are helping us make these incremental changes. These are not changes that are going to be done within like a week or a month. This is a long-term project, but we have turned the corner in terms of the trajectory of how this planet is evolving to open up to the divine ways of life. So how do we do that? What is the purpose for all of this preparation and involvement by humans? Next point. So that requires our part, making conscious contact with a wide variety of celestial helpers, done in meditation, personal or group, to receive insights and the information that they wish to impart. So at the ICC, we have a group of women who are involved in working with the Planetary Seraphim for social reform. And we meet in a group, we quiet our minds, we listen for guidance, and then we observe how the energies are coming into the planet. And what you might say is that it comes in streams of language, information that is encoded with light, color, shape or geometry, sound, symbols, coding, and it's imprinting on human mind, on the human mind circuitry system. Human consciousness is a very vast interlacing of circuitry that functions at all different levels, mentally, emotionally, and it does integrate into the physical body. When we are in these sessions, we are receiving high degrees of information from a higher spiritual culture. And that is to stimulate our creative imagination about how we as individuals can use our creative talents and abilities and gifts. And then we have the gift of the indwelling spirit who is imprinting the divine perspective on our consciousness to help us perceive how we can go ahead and make these changes. And so it is a process. And it is now time for humanity to remember that it is part of a vast cosmic family. And that family consists of many diverse spiritual personalities who are loving and understanding of the plight we've experienced here, and are very willing and capable of helping us, feeding us with the information we need so that we, as boots on the ground, can make those changes, can actually make them come real in physical form. So the next slide. So then what happens from that a point is we start to collaborate with like-minded and like-hearted individuals to develop working groups dedicated to various areas of planetary reform and to make contact with the celestial helpers for their guidance. So it's like gathering in teams and getting the information we need from the helpers, asking them questions, forming like what you might call working groups to take that information out into the public. And the next point is more of the final point in the process, to work with community leaders who are interested in social reform in their areas, especially to reflect the values of peace, tolerance, cooperation, equality, and other spiritual attitudes, and to teach people about the human spiritual connections and how they can participate in reforming the planet. So this is what you might call a little bit of the process by which all of these changes are going to be imparted. So we're basically at the second stage, requires conscious contact. that's where a lot of people are getting fed now. And the next step will be to develop these working groups and then come into greater, it's like the ripple effect. You know, one group starts to function and then there's a ripple effect. That energy starts to grow into larger groups, and then the larger groups can communicate within the community structure. And there are pockets of that happening on the planet, but it is not a planet-wide dynamic yet, but it will be growing in the coming years as the fundamental changes that have been made in human consciousness take deeper root. And in our presentation next, in 2 weeks in May, I'll be talking about the planetary adjudication process that's now underway to further remove the imprint of the rebellion mind, which is all about separation and keeping us in forms of conflict and antagonism with one another, to bring us back to our natural harmony with life, harmony and peace with our creator and all the helpers. So we're in a very critical juxtaposition where the old system is now starting to lose its internal grasp on human consciousness and how we have been thinking about reality. And one of the effects of that is to see that many of our brothers and sisters are very insecure what's happening on the planet from an economic standpoint or a political standpoint. Many people are very, very unhinged and insecure because what is happening within their emotional body is a feeling of insecurity. And that insecurity is caused by these old attachments that we've had to a very destructive planetary culture about war and violence and illness and poverty and death that is now breaking up. And because people have been very rooted in that, even though it has been negative, they feel that insecurity and they don't understand that there's a new spiritual foundation that is rising. So at the same time, these old systems break up, this new spiritual foundation is now rising to support people. So we can make this transition with greater peace and ease and hope and trust that the divine plan and all of the universe intelligence helping us has the bigger picture, and we can participate as faithful workers in the field to implement the changes. So the only last slide I have there are references in the Urantia book to read about the garden culture and Adam and Eve. And of course, it's very fascinating to read about how our spiritual planetary government is set up on the planet. So to help more people understand that we are not doing this alone, because human intelligence would not be capable at this point to understand the cosmic implications. And so we need this level of higher support to guide us along this very, very important path of planetary rehabilitation.
All very encouraging, Donna, to know that we are surrounded by a planetary team, Seraphim, Adam and Eve, and everyone that they work with, all of these higher spiritual beings to kind of lead and guide us. We do have a question from our Zoom audience from Les. He asks, along with the family's importance in raising well-balanced children who are socialized into society in positive ways, is there any information on the role of the community to reach these goals?
Well, I think that will be developing over time as people start moving from the value system based on money in the economy to valuing the soul as the important development of a planetary culture. Eventually, I think there will be councils on marriage and family life from a social standpoint to help young men and women who are entering into marriage, to help them understand the rigors of relationship development, and then, of course, the rigors of raising children and how to nurture that loving, that gentle, innocent little soul to a higher level of understanding through the course of that child's development until they reach adulthood. This is not something that I don't think we have in very much pervasiveness. The only thing that I can think of is the pre-Cana training that is in the Roman Catholic Church. I know that there are people who undergo a very rigorous training to help them with the situation of marriage and harmonizing your personality with your spouse, and then dedicating your training to your children to develop their spiritual and moral ethics. So I do believe that with Adam and Eve's help on the planet, that we will be developing those family councils, and then have a community structure that supports the individual child's development, after school activities, things that will help the child funnel their creative talents into areas where then they can express themselves and be a contributing member to a spiritual based economy, which will not function the same way as we are functioning now with a money driven economy. So when we move from a money-based to a soul-based economy, we'll see a tremendous amount of changes happening all over the planet. But we've got a ways to go before we get to that point yet.
Well,
This is
with that,
preliminary information to see the idea, that this is what we need. This is not a pipe dream. This is actually a concrete thing that needs to develop on the planet.
well, I will say that that the work that I'm doing with the Center for Planetary Management that's the area that we're moving into, is the family learning centers, and it's exactly what you're talking about, is creating these family learning centers where people can be, as Les is referring to, it's the primary place is the family and raising the kids, but if you have a family learning center where the community can participate, then you expand that learning base to the community culture. And so stay tuned. That's in progress. Centerforplanetarymanagement.net is our website, and we're doing that. We've been working with Donna to do some presentations. We'll be sharing more information. So if you're not on our mutual mailing list, make sure that you are, so you can get updates to the webcast that we're going to be doing about that information. So I'm just going to say that there, because our work is so tied together, Donna. You're laying
Yeah.
the foundation. And the only other question I would say, and I will get to your reference page for the UB, I know folks want to know what papers refer to all of this, is if you are, as Les pointed out, we live our daily lives and this stuff is happening around us. And participating in the work that you do with your planetary transformation calls, coming on the webcast, becoming more and more aware. But remind your listeners how they can on a daily basis plug in and participate. The first thing you said was conscious contact, and so that's primary, is to make sure that, one, you're aware of what's going on and get plugged in with the conscious contact, because even our UB readers, reading the UB is one thing, but then take it to the next level and actually make that conscious contact, get into your place of stillness and connect with the seraphim who are responsible for making these changes. Do you have anything else that you can contribute on that note?
Well, that's the first and fundamental step. The human mind has to be prepared to receive the spiritual information. And because we live in a culture where there are so many distractions of electronic devices, where we're always being focused externally on something, to make that internal change, to focus internally on what your spiritual intelligence is trying to help you apprehend, is the fundamental step. And so an individual has to be willing to get out of the human mind and step into the higher dimensions of the spirit mind. That takes practice, that takes dedication, it takes perseverance, and to move beyond the frustration and the interference that the external mind teaches. Now, it will get easier in time as more of these distractions start to fall away, as people have more interest in becoming more spiritually attuned. But the process is to learn how to quell the mental chatter to a point where your mind is more receptive. So the imprint of the indwelling spirit is able to inlay more information and what you might call spiritual circuitry upon the circuitry of the human mind, so that we're tapping into the universe mind and what the universe wants to teach us, and not the planetary mind, which is still operating in a lot of distortion. Now, the planetary mind is starting to come into more coherence with the universe mind. And so, as that happens, more people will start to pick up on that signal and perceive, oh, maybe I don't have to think this way anymore, because now the spirit is starting to say, okay, maybe you should look at it over this way, or, consider it from this perspective. And so when that spiritual energy starts to imprint on the human mind, the next step is to attune, if you will, to the bandwidth of the angels and the other celestial helpers. There's channels, just like a TV channel. You tune into a sports channel or a comedy channel. You're tuning into the channel of the angels, or you're tuning into the channel of Adam and Eve. And all you have to do, it's very simple, is say, this is where I want to make contact. Will you connect me? But you have to make that decision and put the request out. Otherwise, they don't know. You have to say what you want. Otherwise, they can't help you. So this is a very important activity to develop, and not only to develop, to really hone. And I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I knew nothing when I started. I mean, I had a conscious contact with a teacher, but I didn't know how to develop all of the material that I eventually learned. It was given to me. I spent hours in meditation over a number of years to start just receiving this information. I would ask questions, and that process is the same for everyone. I don't care who you are, what your religious beliefs are. This is a spiritual process that has been divinely given to humanity to understand how our consciousness works and how we can cooperate with the higher information that resides in the circuits of our higher mind. So we're clearing the bandwidth of the interference of the planetary mind, and we're opening up to the spirit mind. And that light information comes in, it expands your mental capacity, it expands your ability to perceive higher information. And it's so joyful, it's so wonderful. And it reinforces not only your faith that there's something larger out there, but your joy of living and knowing that you can participate in something so good, something so positive and enlightening for the planet, that there's no ever turning back. You're never going to turn back to the old ways. It just feels too good.
Well, and that's the main thing, is to learn how to live life with joy, and you've given us great insight on that. And you have made it clear, you've spent decades doing this, Donna, but the average person can can connect on a regular basis and still continue to live and work in their daily lives, but still make this connection. You don't have to be a nun in a nunnery, or a monk you don't have to just give up absolutely everything in order to participate in this process. And I think that's really important for people to know, is that, average folks just plug in, just connect. In some traditions it might be called prayer, in others it's meditation, but the connection is meant for everyone, not just our spiritual teachers like Donna, but for everyone to participate in.
Thank you for reinforcing that. Absolutely. You don't have to spend hours. It just requires some dedicated practice. If you would just take 20 minutes or a half hour each day to do it, the benefits accrue quite beautifully and quickly over time. It's up to each individual to take responsibility for your spiritual growth. No one's going to do it for you. But you can easily incorporate this activity into your daily routine. And then you'll find that what happens over time is you feel that spiritual energy and presence supporting you. It changes how you live in a daily world, how you take that back out into the workplace or into your social relationships and become more loving and patient and tolerant of all of our human frailties and foibles. So there's so many benefits to doing this, but that's the first step. And now we're in a phase of trying to get back on track with our divine plan of evolution. So the tremendous amount of spiritual help given to us, but it's up to us to take up the helm and first take that first step of quieting the mind and asking for the divine guidance to start infiltrating and just feed upon all of that beautiful higher consciousness energy that we have a right to experience.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And so I am going to take folks back to this last page that you gave us, and then we'll also, you can see the information on the planetary seraphim, the references in the Urantia book for papers 51, 73, 74, 75, 76, and 114. I'll give you a few minutes if you want to jot those paper numbers down. Some of our audience members I watched you guys taking notes, so I'll give you a second to take those notes. Plus, this PowerPoint will go out. I believe, Donna, you send it out with the recording.
Yes, this will be a part of the recording. Yeah.
Any other questions for Donna, folks? It was all easy breezy, and so everybody has their questions answered. I'm sure things will come up at some point.
What I would like to do
I
now,
just, hi,
oh,
Is that
hi.
Sharon? Yes, Sharon,
Yes,
go ahead.
yes. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the women's group. Do you have a meeting for that set up every 2 weeks, or is that once a week? I've missed that information, I think, in my email.
um, there is a link on the website to get more information about our women's core.
Okay.
Presently, what we are doing is we are replicating the model of the 12 women evangelists or apostles that Jesus commissioned during his human life. And we have learned from them that what Jesus taught them were a couple of things. Number one, was to evoke a soul response in the women so they could come out of their cultural conditioning and step into their divine life purpose and plan that our Creator has given to them. And Jesus was able to help them open up to that. The next thing was how Jesus taught them to minister to people to help them open up to their own soul purpose, a soul to soul communication. So what we are doing in our groups now, we have 3 areas of involvement where we're working with the Women's Core and the Planetary Seraphim to bring in more personal healing for people on the planet, helping people reconnect with the natural world and its intelligence, and then social reform. So what I would encourage you to do is go to the Connie, can you pull that up and maybe put that in the chat, that link to the Women's Core,
Certainly.
the
Yeah,
About Us?
that's very helpful. Thank you for explaining a little bit more. I've heard you speak about this. I heard you on Humanity Rising a couple of months ago, and I was very, very guided to connect with you. I know I have information to share with you all, and I know you have a lot to share with me. So I'm definitely I'm on your page. I'm in your bandwidth, and I'm looking forward to the connection, however that is. And I'd love to know where in Florida you are.
I'm in Delray Beach, which is a coastal town about a half hour north of Fort Lauderdale.
I've been, yes, I'm familiar. I'm soon moving into Florida. That's why I'm asking, but I'll be
Oh,
further north. I'll be further north. I'll be around Vero and Fort Pierce and all of
oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, that's not too far from where I am. The other thing, Sharon, I would encourage you to just send me an email and maybe we can set up a personal time to chat too.
I'd
Get
love
to know
that.
each other and see how we can mutually support each other.
I'd
So here,
love that. Thank you.
so here's the page for the Women's Core. We have Kona is involved and Bonnie, as you can see on the screen, is also involved. So check that out and then, yeah, send me an email and we can further discuss this and how you might want to get involved with us.
Thank
And
you
as a
so much for
reminder,
letting me interrupt
yeah,
that, you all. I know you were in a flow, and I really appreciate your taking a moment. Thank you.
yeah,
Of
great
course.
question, Sharon, for sure. Because the work that Donna is doing and the work that the Women's Corps is directly related to the presentation material, especially about social reform. So that's a great question. This is her website again. I did put in the chat the link to the Women's Corps page at the website. And one more time as a reminder, if you need Donna's email, it's donna@institutechristconsciousness.org, and just send her a direct link so she can get you connected.
Great. Thank
All
you.
right. Any other questions from our audience? That was a great question. Well, very good. Donna, any final words that you would like to give about this material?
Well, what I like to do after every presentation is to give us an opportunity to let that information just sink in by doing a meditation where you can connect with Adam and Eve or connect with the planetary seraphim. And so what I'd like us to do now is just take a few minutes to do that. And just to kind of feel a vibration around you, what you might think of them as an energy signature of their beingness, their uniqueness. Just like you and I have a unique residue or a personality, so do they. So, Mother and Father God, we thank you for all of the wonderful help, incredible help that you have given to this planet to help us outwork our ignominious past and step into the bright future that is awaiting us, that we are building together with the support of all of our wonderful universe brothers and sisters of the higher dimensions. And so we thank you now for providing us a space to receive and to imprint upon the patterns and the divine essences of Adam and Eve. We ask them to step forward now and gently calibrate each individual to their loving, synergistic, harmonious energies and relationship dynamic. So just sit with that. And if you want to focus the words Adam and Eve over your heart and just let them feed you like this is food for your heart and soul. And we'll just hold this for a few minutes. And then invite them to calibrate you to their garden culture, that beautiful environment where humanity and its natural intelligence is opening to the natural intelligence of the planet and what it wants to teach us. Just kind of see yourself standing in the words, the Garden of Eden, and just let your feet soak into this energy. There's so much information for us to learn. We have access to this now. Just feed, feed, feed upon it. And if there's anything in particularly that you're interested about the garden culture, you can pose that to Adam and Eve or your spirit. Thereby expanding your natural intuitive faculties to apprehend higher information. And you can still stay connected to Adam and Eve and the garden culture, but just now hold that intention for the planetary seraphim to come around you. These are the angels who are so dedicated to helping the social evolution of our world reach higher states of consciousness. They are tireless in their activities. They are totally dedicated to the reforms that are necessary for our social institutions to reflect the divine ways of life. So just let them come around you. Begin to feel like a new support system. You don't have to be limited by what our planetary culture teaches us. There is a universe culture of such incredible magnitude and scope and wealth of energies, ideas, and information that we need now. Just let them calibrate you to this higher dimensional level. Again, expanding your natural intuitive faculties to apprehend this information. And then if you wish, you can certainly talk to the angels and share with them any areas of interest that you might be involved in, making contact with them. What are the individual talents and abilities you have that can contribute to these various social institutions? It is perfectly okay to have a conversation with them, to develop a two-way stream of communication where they can assist you and support you. And to help you secure your intuitive faculties to become more adept at receiving the higher information. This is an exercise you can repeat time and again. There is no one right way to do it. It's mostly based on your intention to receive the information and to spend a few moments relaxing your body, quieting the mental chatter so that the internal bandwidth of your receptivity capacity can expand and receive what you need to learn. Mother and Father, we thank you again for all of the ways in which we are learning these ways of life that come from the source of all reality. And we thank you for helping us open to these dynamics more and more each day, coming out of the shadows and to live in the light of truth, love, goodness, and beauty. And I thank everyone who joined me on this call today. And for those of you who listened to the recording, may you all receive a mighty blessing and upliftment and have more insight to perceive what you need to learn to continue to grow on your path and to live your best life as a spiritually awakened son and daughter of our Creator. And I thank you for allowing me to share these brief moments with you, especially in meditation, that you may grow in these dynamics and feel more at peace in who you are. Thank you so much. And we now conclude. So take a minute to come back. And once again, I'll say thank you to all of you who participated and for those of you who listened to the recording. And I'll get that out very soon to everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Kona, once again for your delightful facilitation.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. It's always a pleasure to be with you and to grow spiritually and with the information and especially the meditations and how you just connect us to spirit. So thank you for that. As a reminder, folks, we're with Donna D'Angelo with the Institute of Christ Consciousness today. This is her email, donna@institutechristconsciousness.org. This program in her ministry is made possible by the generous donations of her faithful donors. If you would like to contribute to Donna's ministry, please find the donation possibilities on her website. Again, institutechristconsciousness.org. Your gifts make all of this and more ministry possible, and we're ever so grateful for all that you and her faithful donors have done for many, many years. So thank you for being with us today. We will be back in 2 weeks talking about the adjudication and what is happening on the planet now. So don't miss that, and we'll see you then. Thank you.